Creation stories, first narratives, oral tradition have been around for a long time. Creation stories, traditional stories have been around from the moment that somebody decided to reconcile something that made them feel sad, something that made them feel angry, something that made them feel utter despair. Sometimes as parents or care providers or grandmothers, we question ourselves. We might have false wonderings. We might feel bad about how we treated our child, about how we snapped at them or maybe yelled at them for being little, for being curious, for making a mistake. That's kind of passed down to us, that moment of feeling bad. And so this next creation story, this next traditional story I want to share with you is about that feeling. It's about knowing when you messed up. And for some, it's about knowing you won't put up with it anymore. It's about knowing you can't live like this anymore. It's about being pushed to that edge. So this story is about transformation. This story has some sad, some angry emotions in it. This story is from the Mohawk people. You see, a long, long, long time ago, there was this family. There's this family with a young boy. And something happened to the parents. You see, they went out one day and they didn't return. When they didn't come back home, this young boy was alone. He was an orphan. This orphan was brought to other houses. The person that brought this orphan to the other houses was asking the people to take care of this young boy. Nobody would. Nobody opened their doors to him. They would shut the door on him. This boy that lost his parents had nowhere to go. This boy that lost his parents kept telling this person, I have an uncle somewhere. You see, my dad would talk about his brother, and that's my uncle. And so we just have to find him. This young boy had never met his uncle. He didn't know what he looked like. He didn't know his name. So this person that was holding his hand, taking him to everyone's houses, asking, will you care for this orphan? Will you take care of this boy? Needed to find his uncle. He needed to find him. This boy needed to be with his family. He needed to be cared for by somebody. They finally found him. They found his uncle. His uncle lived a little bit farther away from where he grew up. This uncle lived by himself. He didn't have a family. He didn't have a wife or children. This uncle looked at his nephew and he let him in his house. Oh, what a relief. What a relief. The orphan was in a home now. The orphan was with his uncle. The orphan heard stories about his uncle. The orphan remembered when his dad would talk about his brother. He felt so good to be in a home. He felt so good until it was time to eat. You see, Uncle had never cared for anybody else before. He had a big kind of mean voice, and he wouldn't serve the young boy food on a plate at the table. He would eat his dinner and give him the scraps. When the young boy would attempt to try to help with something in the house, the uncle would say things like, "You're so stupid. You're such a waste of life." One time the young boy broke something. He broke something that belonged to the uncle, and the uncle hit him. The young boy fell down. The boy had never been hit before. When he hit the floor, he just cried, and the uncle got more mad at him for crying, told him to stop crying. He said, "Boys don't cry." The uncle didn't even say his name. The boy knew he had a name, and the uncle would call him stupid and say he's worthless. So the young boy was hungry, and he was abused. He was hurting. He wasn't allowed to cry. The uncle would go out hunting, and he'd come back with meat, with game, and he would process it. And the young boy wanted to learn. He tried to watch him, and the uncle would tell him to go on. He didn't teach him. He didn't show him how to do it or what he was doing. "Go on, stupid. Get out of here." And the uncle would eat his food and give him the scraps. The boy would get more bruises. The boy could barely remember his parents. He just felt a lot of sadness. The boy felt shame and worthlessness. Maybe he shouldn't be alive too. Maybe the boy would tell himself, "Maybe I shouldn't be here. All my uncle does is get mad at me. He just hurts me. I can't even cry when I get hurt. This isn't fair." The young boy felt worthless. Utter despair. He never felt that. He missed his parents. All he could remember was doors being shut on his face. He remembered being happy about being in his uncle's home. He didn't know what to do, but he knew he couldn't live like this anymore. He knew he couldn't be there anymore. He knew that next time his uncle went out, he would leave. He didn't know where he was going to go, but he wasn't going to be beaten anymore. He wasn't going to be called stupid anymore. He would say his name to himself over and over. He would think about his parents. He wished he would have learned how to hunt. He wished he would have known how to care for himself. That sadness, that shame, that anger, that confusion. He was so full of grief. He left his uncle's house. He walked. He had never been in these woods before. He just kept walking. He didn't know where was where. He didn't remember how to get back to where he came from. where he was born. He just kept walking. He knew life had to be better for him. He knew it. He was tired of walking. He decided to sit by a tree and just conk out, just fall asleep. He slept. He slept. While he slept, the animals, they noticed him. The animals noticed this young person, this little boy, had marks on him. They're not used to seeing people with marks on them like that. They're not used to seeing little ones by themselves in the woods. They watched him sleep and they counseled, they talked about it. They noticed him shivering. They noticed him alone. They saw no one else following him or coming after him. They could feel his heart. They could feel his sadness, his anger, his confusion. The animals are not used to feeling those things, not from people, not from each other. This was foreign to them, but they knew this was a little boy. They knew somebody had to take care of him. They continued meeting about him. They continued counseling about him. How are we going to help this little boy? How are we going to care for him? He's cold. We don't want him to die. Somebody needs to mother him. Somebody needs to father him. They started looking in the trees, and Squirrel said, well, I can take care of him. I live up here and I gather, and I could teach him how to gather nuts and live up here with me. They thought that was nice of Squirrel. They thought that was very kind of Squirrel to offer that. And they said, he's too big. He could get hurt. He doesn't have wings. He can't climb like you, Squirrel. Coyote offered. Nope. Coyote, he doesn't eat everything that you eat. He needs help. They looked at the one being that eats like we do. They looked at the one being that could help the young boy. The big, furry, strong bear. Bear, you have to take care of this young boy. Bear, you live in that cave. Bear, you know how to fish. Bear, you know how to gather medicines. Bear, you're covered in fur. Bear, you can help him. Bear decided to help. Bear decided to be the caregiver of this young boy. When the young boy awoke, bears came to him. Bears took him in. They hugged him. They brought him in their cave. They fed him fish. They showed him how to find roots, how to feed himself, how to pick berries. The young boy was learning so much. The young boy began to notice something when he was digging. He was following what Bear was teaching him. He was paying attention. He was following him. He began to notice that when he was digging, claws were coming out of his hands, coming out of his fingers. The young boy began to smell. He began to smell very, very strongly. He watched his nose turn into a snout. He put his claws on his furry body. He felt his ears move on top of his head. The young boy was turning into a bear. Many moons, many winters had gone by. Hibernations happened. This young boy became the bear. This bear loved his life. He loved digging for roots and waking up in the springtime, smelling all the smells he could smell. He loved fishing. He loved fishing. He loved the competition that he had among the other animals. He loved listening to the stories of the salmon people. He loved witnessing the cedars. He loved his life now. This young boy that became the bear had forgotten. He forgot what it felt like to feel sorrow, to feel grief, to feel sadness, to feel anger. This young boy that became the bear loved being the bear. He loved it. He felt a little bit different because he was so thankful. He was so radically humble to be part of this bear family. One day the bear family was on their way to gather roots. The seasons were changing again, and they were on their way to gather roots because they knew the big sleep was coming. They were so good at what they did. Their noses were so strong, though. They could smell so many things. As they were on their way to gather, the young boy that became the bear could smell something. And he remembered. He could smell this smell, and he remembered sadness. He began to feel really sad, and then he began to feel mad, and then he began to feel grief. He hadn't felt this in a long time. He remembered being a young boy. He remembered. And he could smell the smell getting stronger. He could smell it. What was that? And the other bears looked up and they noticed this man. They noticed this man, this hunter, walking among the woods, and they noticed him. And they looked at the young boy and they could feel all his emotions. They could feel his sadness, his grief, his pain, his sorrow. They knew that was the young boy's uncle. They told him, be careful. They told him, he's here. That's him. The young boy that became the bear didn't know what to do. But he knew he had to protect his bear family. He knew he had to give back. He had to be of service for his bear family, the ones that provided for him and took him in and cared for him and hugged him and loved him and taught him so many things. He knew. So the hunter, his uncle, comes to the bears. He was getting ready to shoot at them. Mama bear jumped in front of the boy who became the bear to protect him. He jumped in front of her 10 yards away from his uncle, 10 yards from the one who used to abuse him and made him feel all that pain and grief and sorrow. He put his hands up, his paws up at him. He was just about to roar when the uncle put his bow down. Tears streaming from the uncle's face, from his eyes. The bear family didn't know what to feel. They didn't know what to do. They had never seen a hunter put their bow down like that. They had never witnessed that before. They cautioned the young boy. The young boy that became the bear, they told him, that's your uncle. Look at him, smell him. His uncle walked towards him. He said, I'm sorry. He said, I know that's you. He said, you're not like the other bears. You're my nephew. I could see it. The bear family advised the young boy that became the bear, they advised him that his uncle has changed. They told him they could smell it, they could feel it, they could see it. Look at his eyes. They're gentle. Feel his heart, it's warm. Look at the tears going down his face. Reconciliation. Remorse. He loves you. The boy that became the bear walked towards his uncle, and they hugged. He went back home with his uncle that day. And his uncle told him, "When you left me, I didn't know what to do. When you left me, I went to all the houses. I went looking for you. I said, 'Where's my brother's son? He's a young boy. He's a stupid young boy. Where is he?' And the people, mothers, fathers, they told me, 'You shouldn't be saying that to him.' They asked me, 'What did you do to him?' And I told them, 'I fed you my scraps.' I told them, 'I kept you out of my way.' I told them how I put my hands to your face in anger. I told them I got mad at you for crying because you're not supposed to. I told them all those things, you see. Nephew, they told me that wasn't right. Nephew, they invited me to watch how they are with their children. Nephew, I got to see all the things I did wrong, and I've been looking for you ever since. Nephew, you have to come home with me. I want to be your uncle. I want to teach you things. Nephew, I love you and I'm sorry." Tears were still coming down his face. The young boy that was the bear began to grow his fingers back out of his paws. His ears moved down to the side of his head. His snout became his nose. And he kept walking with his uncle. Hand in hand, they walked home. The young boy that became the bear showed his uncle how to dig for roots. He showed him when to pick the berries. He showed him how to smell things. He showed him love right back. The story of the young boy who became the bear has many things, has many elements. Has a lot of regret, has a lot of emotions, has community. You see, when we're put in places that we don't want to be, we can leave. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes we suffer. And sometimes people change. And sometimes they find ways. And sometimes a story can help you remember. Sometimes a story can help remind you of digging for roots, of saying, "I'm sorry," of saying, "I won't live like this," of saying, "We are emotional beings." Sometimes a story can remind us of who we can be. Sometimes a story can remind us of who we used to be or who we don't want to be.